Good day to all. I'm here to talk about William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying for Faulkner in August. It's been a couple of years since I've joined Faulkner in August. I believe 2022 Faulkner in August was about sanctuary, and I did not really care for that book at all. However, I read this book over the past week, and then I read it again and saw so many new amazing things, and kind of became a proper fan of William Faulkner, whereas before I was greatly appreciative of his abilities, but couldn't really say I'm a fan. I do like this book quite a bit, which is why I read it twice, and I considered reading it a third time, but I thought I won't get enough out of a third read so soon as I did out of a second read so soon. Second time I've done that. First time was for Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, which, whoa, when I reread it immediately after, I gained so much more from it. Maybe rereading immediately after is something that I should do more of if I feel the desire to. Anyway, As I Lay Dying is a quick, easy for Faulkner read that is told from multiple points of view of a poor family in this county that Faulkner made up, Yakapatwa or something. I can't remember how to say it. And the matriarch of the family, Addie, is dying, and she wants to be buried with her people in Jefferson. And she tasks her family to do everything so that she will be beholden to no man, as her husband often says. She tasks her family, her oldest son Cash, to build the coffin that she's going to be buried in, just outside of her window so she can keep an eye on the process. She wants all of them to come along, carry her on the carriage, on the wagon, on the way to Jefferson, dig the hole and bury her and have the proper rites and all this. And through this Odyssey, if you will, I read that this name, As I Lay Dying, came through a certain translation from around Faulkner's time of the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey. Which is interesting in its own right, because this is no easy journey from their town, their homestead, to Jefferson. It takes 9 days. They have all kinds of troubles passing over running water. They lose livestock. They lose their mind, in the case of one character. One of the daughter, Dewey Dell, has lost her innocence due to a young man, Leif, and some cruel pharmacists or assistants to pharmacists. The father is seemingly kind of manipulative, refusing to be beholden to any man and getting getting things his way. He's looking for some new teeth, which he hasn't had for quite some time. And one of the children, Vardaman, does not seem to have a grasp on reality at all either. At one point, for one whole chapter, saying, "My mother is a fish." And he's disassociating in a number of ways that are concerning. There is all kinds of drama in this book. There is psychoses, there is great family tension, and just these cruel neighbors that look down on this poor, ragged family, who are holier than thou. One of them, Cora, the Tulls, I should say, Cora really looks down on Addie for, you know, the way her sons are, the way her family is, the way she carries herself and everything like that. This leads to one of the sickest burns ever written at the end of Addie's singular chapter. But before I get into any of the sort of really juicy literary things, it is an incredible journey, and the way that the journey is told through each narrator's perspective really lets you in on so much about this. Like, the world is built in just 240 pages very well. You get a firm understanding of the hypocrisies of this place, the tensions among siblings and so on and so forth, and the, you know, what's at the heart of every character and what drives them and motivates them, and this kind of thing. Extremely well done, in my opinion. Excuse me, I was a big fan, and I don't even know if they're like, if you can call it's successful by the end, because the family kind of falls apart in terrible ways. So now I will explain a few more particular details. Darl, oh my God, this guy is just not really my favorite narrator at all, actually. But it is very interesting that he constantly seems to know what is happening when he's not in the room or wasn't at that place at that time. He's got a lot of fuel to burn in terms of like just egging on his brother, who is the product of Addie herself, being a little bit free, shall we say. I'm forgetting the word I'm looking for, but she slept with the minister, who in the course of the story wants to go and admit what has happened, and feels guilty about what he's done, leaving her with child. But Addie died before she could tell anybody, and before he could get there and admit the truth of his sin against God and sin against that family and sin against man and so on. So he thinks, well, God has forgiven me. So, which I believe we are meant to look at with disdain. This is also something I believe like Cora is really looking down on her for. There is, Darl, as I was trying to say before, he goes mad, burns down a farm in a really interesting scene that Vardaman sees, but is told not to tell anybody by Dewey Dal, who has her own problems of being pregnant and not knowing what to do and being given money to go to a pharmacist who will know how to deal with it, but these people are sort of holier than thou and extremely religious and conservative and this kind of thing, and tell her to basically live with the consequences until she meets the second doctor, who takes advantage of her, manipulates her, gives her false medicine, and rapes her in the basement. I think, seemingly so. Things are not looking good for this family. No. The father, Ants, I believe is how you say his name, uses Dewey Dell's money to get new teeth. And she's desperately begging him not to make it happen, but she can't tell him why she needs it or what's going on, or they make it kind of in a way after Darl has been taken away, and yes, he's taken away, all right, yes. he's not going to be in the family anymore. One thing that I really loved, just as like a literary sort of thing, there is this amazing moment before Addie dies. I guess I'll say two things that are kind of interconnected. There's this amazing moment of Dewey Dell and Darrell looking at each other and both understanding Dewey Dell's situation and everything that's like, causing her anxiety. There is a real clear understanding, I guess because not that Darrell is clairvoyant, but he's quite perceptive in a sense, if we can really trust his, he seems to have gone mad. But there is, this moment between them in the house that is unspoken, but all the worries and fears of Darrell are clear as day to Dewey Dell and to the reader. And Dewey Dell's worries and fears about her pregnancy are just as abundantly clear to Darrell and to the reader without anything being said. And it is amazing because later, especially, Addie's chapter, which is just an amazingly good chapter. This was the chapter where I decided I've got to read this again, the whole book, because I feel like I just didn't understand anything before, and I did, but I did notice different things, and I really was able to see the voice of every character much more clearly the second time I read, which was amazing. But Addie sort of explains her life and how she came to be with aunts and came to be with so many children, and so I took ants, and when I knew that I had cash, I knew that living was terrible, and that this was the answer to it. That was when I learned that words are no good, that words don't ever fit even what they are trying to say at. When he was born, I knew that motherhood was invented by someone who had... So I took ants, and when I knew that I had cash, I knew that living was terrible, and that this was the answer to it. That was when I learned that words are no good, that words don't ever fit even what they are trying to say at. When he was born, I knew that motherhood was invented by someone who had to have a word for it, because the ones that had the children didn't care whether there was a word for it or not. I knew that fear was invented by someone that had never had the fear. Pride, who never had the pride. I knew that it had been, not that they had dirty noses, but that we had had to use one another by words like spiders dangling by their mouths from a beam, swinging and twisting and never touching, and that only through the blows of the switch could my blood and their blood flow as one stream. I knew that it had been, not that my aloneness had to be violated over and over each day, but that it had never been violated until cash came, not even by ants in the nights. Oh my God. Addie is like, I wouldn't say a breath of fresh air, but her chapter comes packing with a lot of just really intense introspective thoughts. Someone who's clearly analyzed, the kind of suffering they're going through and this kind of thing. And the first time I read this, I thought that was really beautifully written and really well spoken and really well written and said. But I didn't really make the connection to that scene I mentioned earlier with Dewey Dell and Darrell. That I thought was magnificent the second time through. And then the other thing that I also thought was really well written, but didn't really get, because I don't know what, I guess I was so focused on what's the story, I wasn't really appreciating the beauty of the language, so to speak, and what is he really trying to do. But I didn't really very clearly notice that Cora and Tull, it's obvious, but I didn't get the strong sense of their kind of disgust or disdain for this family. Until I read it the second time and I read the end of this chapter, because Cora is constantly kind of badgering Addie about faith and this kind of thing. She's a very strong religious woman. I gave Anne's Dewey Dell to Negative Jewel. Then I gave him Vardaman to replace the child I had robbed him of, because she has cheated, right? And Jewel is the product of that. So I gave Anne's Dewey Dell to Negative Jewel. Then I gave him Vardaman to replace the child I had robbed him of. And now he has 3 children that are his and not mine. And then I could get ready to die, which goes back to something that her father has taught her about like living to die and this kind of thing. Anyway, one day I was talking to Cora. She prayed for me because she believed I was blind to sin, wanting me to kneel and pray too, because people to whom sin is just a matter of words, to them salvation is just words too. Ooh! Oh my God! Get him, girl! Jesus! Oh! I was reading. I often, when I'm at home, I walk around the house while I'm reading. I don't know why. It's just like a nervous habit of mine. My uncle, I don't know how much he reads, if he does at all, but he paces around too. And I was reading while I was doing that. I read that part the second time, and I had the same kind of reaction. Oh, sat down, and I was laughing a lot. I thought it was quite funny, but oh my God! Oh, I think there is something interesting to be said about, like, yeah, what is the use of language? I mean, it is a tool, it's a communication tool, right? Is there any way to actually properly convey the experience of something? Well, I'm not sure, but you can certainly use words to eviscerate someone. Interestingly, she's dead at this point, so I don't know how she's saying that. Is it while... is she saying this as she lays dying? Or thinking it? Is it her spirit? Is it... I don't know what, but this book seemed to have a lot to say about the religious, especially, what was interesting when the minister tried to come to the house, he had no problem getting across. None at all. This family is suffering. They lose days, they lose livestock just trying to travel. They lose a lot of things and they have to try and cross this river twice, terribly. And Cash also breaks his leg in the process of getting to Jefferson. But the minister, the priest, doesn't have any issues. He just gets over there and sees, oh, Addie's dead. I don't need to apologize. God didn't want me to say anything because otherwise Addie would still be alive when I got there. This is quite an angry book. This has a lot to say about religion, or it's coming swinging for Southern culture, that's for sure. But still, I guess for me, as I just said, I hate to constantly repeat myself, although I do it all the time. For me, I think this book really poses the question of, like, what is language really for? Like, how can it properly be used, and can it really convey the experience of something? Can you really only understand through experience? Whereas I suppose hearing about it, reading about it, right? You're not going to quite understand. But I don't know. I think it's a great book. I think Addie's chapter was a big winner for me, and so many other chapters were really great. I think every character really had so much that they brought to the table, but William Faulkner really knocked it out of the park with Addie's chapter. That's all I have to say. I love this book, particularly Addie's chapter, and Dewey Dell's chapters. I feel bad for her. I wasn't too big a fan of Darrow myself, but otherwise, or Tull, I think his chapters were not that interesting to me, but everyone else's chapters, Vardaman's chapters, really interesting to see this possibly simple-minded or complete nut job who's too young to really understand anything. I don't know. And Jules' angst in his, like, what's his place in the family, this kind of thing. Great writing, great book. And you know what? I have too many other books to read at the moment, and I don't want to read like more Faulkner right away because I just read this twice, but I'm quite convinced to read, you can't really read it here maybe, but that is Light in August. I will probably read that next. That's all I've got to say. I enjoyed the book. Thank you.